You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
After years of growth after the pandemic, the spirits sector is facing a softening demand as cost of living pressures mount in major consumption markets. Many consumers are opting to moderate their alcohol consumption to account for the squeeze on disposable incomes, as well as shifts in lifestyle choices. One of the major wine and spirits giants tackling these challenges is Moët Hennessy, the wine and spirits division of LVMH. Moët Hennessy is the largest luxury wines and spirits company in the world, representing a broad range of world-renowned wines and spirits brands that have become synonymous with the most prestigious origins and terroirs. My guest on The Luxury Item is Jonas Tåhlin, president of spirits brands at Moët Hennessy. He oversees the global spirits business of 7 of the LVMH Group's 75 Maisons, including Belvedere Vodka, Glenmorangie and Ardbeg single malt whiskies, Eminente Cuban rum, Volcan de Tierra Tequila, Woodinville American whiskey, and most recently spearheaded the joint venture with Beyoncé Knowles-Carter to launch SirDavis American whiskey. Jonas started his career in consumer goods with 10 years at P&G and then moved to the world of wine and spirits in 2006 by joining Absolut Vodka, where he progressed to become VP of Sales, Global CMO, and then CEO of Absolut Elix. He moved to LVMH in 2020 to lead the global spirits business. Welcome to The Luxury Item, Jonas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show. So you oversee the global spirits of 7 of Moët Hennessy's Maisons that span across the whiskey, tequila, vodka, and rum segments. All have been facing challenges in their own ways. If you step back to late 2023, the spirits industry had a much sunnier outlook on how 2024 might pan out, with the worst of inflation and its impact on consumer spending expected to be in the past. Fast forward to the present, and a mixture of political and economic uncertainty and continued pressure on consumer spending continues to weigh on the spirits business, big and small. Consumer attitudes also suggest a cultural shift towards less drinking. How would you characterize the spirits market and the consumer right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the headline thought is, the world is rarely quite as bad as people say, or quite as good as people say either. So, of course, 2024 has been a challenging year, there's no doubt. But we've had challenging years before. For those who've been in this industry for a while, we might remember what it was like around the year 2000 or the year 2008 with the financial crisis. And I think the fact that we haven't had a downturn like this in 15 years or more is unusual, if anything. But yeah, 2024 was tough, and probably tougher than most of us thought. I think the simple truth and fact of the matter is that people have had less disposable income than we thought they were going to. It's inflation, it's interest rates, it's mortgages, it's energy prices rising. And so what's left at the end, once you've paid the bills, is not as much as it used to be, especially not as much as people had during the extreme years of the pandemic, 21, 22, and 23. So yeah, it's been tough. But again, we've seen that before, and we're certainly confident that things will get better. And I think already we're starting to see some positive signs of growth. The U.S. has been doing reasonably well in the past couple of months, and so yeah, it's a downturn, but we still remain optimistic.
Are you seeing occasions for consumption also evolving?
We have, and we are, and although I would say that they've been going on for a while, we do see that the traditional nightclub occasion has been going down for quite a long time. It seems consumers are enjoying spending their nights and having their cocktails at home to a higher extent, maybe than nightclubs. We've certainly seen that. On the other hand, we've seen a continuous upturn in what we call vibe dining or high energy dining, or even lunch, where people will enjoy a high energy environment, and that could be on the beach or somewhere else. So that's something that's certainly increasing. I would say cocktailing, it's been growing for a very long time, and I think it's still growing. And within that, we certainly see ready to drink cocktails are certainly having their moment right now.
LVMH and Moët Hennessy's response to headwinds have traditionally been strategic and forward-looking, whether it's strengthening the brand through continued investment in brand positioning and marketing efforts to maintain desirability of its brands, or inventory management and market diversification. How are you attacking the situation?
First of all, I think it's important to remember that we are fortunate in that we have an ownership of LVMH and Moët Hennessy, which is very long term in its nature. We're not looking to necessarily have a fantastic next quarter. I think we're looking to have a fantastic next decade or several decades.
Hmm.
And we keep that long term view in everything we do. And within that, how we build the brands over time is simple in theory, more difficult in practice, but we speak about brand desirability. That is the reason we're here, is to build the desirability of our brands. In many cases, they are hundreds of years old, and most of us only have a chance to work on them for a few years, but we all try to leave them more desirable than how we found them. And that's a combination of focus on their quality. We try to really pay attention to how we make our products, extreme quality with a belief that quality will always win over time. Creativity in the way we bring them across to consumers, and creativity, I think, is we like to view that as a mix of art and science, not too much science and not too much
Hmm.
art, but really finding the right balance between the two. We think culture is incredibly important. We try to place our brands in culture, making them culturally relevant to really understand the groundswell of what's going on. And then I would also mention innovation as being continuously really important across all of our categories. We always try to innovate. And I think if we do those things well, we build our brand desirability. And if we are building our brand desirability, we're going to get through good times and bad times.
Well, I can't talk about the market without talking about China. And given weakness in China, the US is set to be the focus of attention for many luxury brands, especially in your parent company. Are you sharpening your focus in the US market too?
We are, but I will still say the US has been and will continue to be our number one market. It's the biggest market, it's the most valuable market, but even beyond that, it's also in our industry, it is also the trend-setting market in the sense of things that happen in America, they tend to spread in the world of wines and spirits to the rest of the world. That's not the case in every category. We can think of several others, automotive being one perhaps, where that's not the case. But in the world of wine and spirits, that's always been the case, and I think it's going to continue to be the case. So yes, it is and will remain our number one priority, and we are definitely focused on the US this year as well, and perhaps even more than before. We're expanding our portfolio, our luxury offering. Um, I hope we can talk about them more a little bit later on, but I'll mention things like Belvedere 10.
Hmm.
I'll mention, SirDavis, our American whiskey,
Yeah.
our higher expressions of Glenmorangie, the 18, 25-year-olds. These are launches that are very much focused on the US. We keep engaging more and more with the high net worth individuals. So many successful Americans that are accumulating wealth that have the ability to enjoy our products. We're engaging with them on one-on-one relationships. We're providing experiences. A lot of folks on experiential. We are increasing our marketing investments. And the other thing I would say, which is very relevant to the spirits portfolio, is we have stood up for the first time a dedicated sales team, which is just focused on whiskey in America specifically, which we're very excited about for 2025.
I want to dive into some of the brands in your portfolio. You mentioned a few. So let's start with the Scotch whiskey brands, Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. Both brands date back to the 1800s, with Ardbeg having a bit of a tumultuous history. Ardbeg was on the brink of extinction,
Mm,
but was saved by Glenmorangie's distillery in 1997 to revitalize it back to its
yes,
prime. LVMH
yes.
acquired Glenmorangie along with Ardbeg Distillery in 2004, adding whiskey brands to its portfolio, which at the time already included Hennessy Cognac. What opportunity did LVMH see in these two niche Scotch whiskey brands that made it
Yeah.
feel right for the portfolio?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I would characterize Glenmorangie as niche. I think it's definitely something that can have a very broad appeal. Ardbeg, with its very peaty, smoky natures, is perhaps a little bit more pointed in its appeal. Look, overall, I think whiskey and especially single malt is such a beautiful fit for LVMH and for Moët Hennessy. We pride ourselves on things like terroir,
Hmm.
craftsmanship, aging, blending. All of those things are obviously what whiskey and single malt is all about. So when you think of luxury spirits, it's difficult to think of anything that's a better fit than single malt whiskey. And Glenmorangie is I think it is the preeminent Highland single malt. So unique in its style with our tall stills, which create this incredibly elegant flavor. The work that Dr. Bill has done in terms of pioneering, I would say, finishing in whiskey, the very unique water source that we have. It's just such a beautifully elegant whiskey, which I think is a very nice juxtaposition against some of the sort of heavier sherry forward whiskeys that you can find in Speyside and elsewhere. It's shocking to think today that Ardbeg, when we acquired it 20 years ago, was almost a gift with purchase.
Mhm.
It was, as you say, very close to extinction, a very, very small brand, a small single malt located on this beautiful island of Isla,
Mhm.
and having had this real roller coaster of a history. But I think we can and do feel very proud of how Ardbeg has developed since then. It's become a real cult brand with an incredible following, with fan base that are organizing their lives around Ardbeg, organized in the Ardbeg committee, by the way, whose job it is to make sure that the Ardbeg distillery never is mothballed again.
Yeah, what is the name
And
of that group again? I forgot
it's the Ardbeg committee,
the
and
community.
it's
Right.
the committee. It's a couple of 100,000 members now, and they are so passionate about the brand. It's one of those few brands in the world where the brand really plays a big role in people's lives. You can think of maybe a handful of others. If they're Harley Davidson might be another one, but we're so proud of it, and it's doing so well.
There's an Ardbeg Day, isn't there?
There is an Ardbeg Day every single year, and if you haven't been to Isla to enjoy it, it's a fantastic festive day just before summer. And we typically release a specific version of Ardbeg in celebration of the Ardbeg Day.
Now, I see you have a new face for Glenmorangie, the legendary actor Harrison Ford. He stars in a new global campaign for Glenmorangie that's highlighted by a series of episodic films directed by filmmaker Joel Edgerton. I saw the first episode and it was very well done. Of course, Ford brings along his trademark gruff yet sneakily pleasant, curmudgeonly sense of humor to the ad, as you would expect. Could you talk about the Once Upon a Time in Scotland campaign and what the brand was hoping to achieve with the narrative?
Yes, for sure. Well, first of all, we're very, very happy about it. We're very proud of it, and it's been incredibly well received. And I'm glad to hear that you liked it as well, Scott. If we take a step back, I think we have to somehow confess that sometimes single malts can be a little boring. We can sometimes take ourselves very, very seriously, and we should, but at the same time, we also need to have a little bit of fun. And single malts did not have a very good year in 2024, even compared to some other spirits categories. I think American whiskey, especially in America, has been a bit more energetic and has enjoyed a little bit more momentum, perhaps. And I think against that context, we wanted to put single malt back into people's lives in a relevant way to make them smile and to remember this incredibly beautiful category.
Mhm.
Therefore, Once Upon a Time in Scotland, yes, it's about Glenmorangie, but it's really also a love letter written to Scotland, seen through the eyes of Harrison Ford, whom we chose because, much like Glenmorangie, he is an icon.
Mhm.
And at the same time, he's an icon. He's in his 80s now, but he's also more relevant than ever.
Yeah.
He's got his series 1923. He's got another series, Shrinking. He's part of, the Marvel project where he's the Red Hulk in their most recent film. So even though he's getting on in age, a little bit like the single malts and like Glenmorangie, he still remains young and relevant. And that's why I think it makes him such a beautiful choice for this. And as I said, he's telling the story of Glenmorangie through his own eyes, through his own personality. We get to see Harrison Ford the way he really is. So it's genuine, it's authentic. Much of it was not scripted. It was Harrison. He wanted to act against not other actors, but against the good people that make Glenmorangie day in and day out. So if you watch the next episodes that'll come up, you'll see that he's actually starring the people who are making Glenmorangie every day. It's beautiful, it's unpretentious, it's endearing, and hopefully it will help bring a little bit more energy back to Scotland and single malt, and of course to Glenmorangie.
Yeah, a great job. And one of the more interesting Scotch whiskey marketing efforts I've seen was from Ardbeg a couple of years ago. It tossed away the standard Scotch whiskey marketing playbook and let its geek flag fly, if you will. It created this 40-page graphic sci-fi novel, Planet Ardbeg, a comic book featuring three stories centered around Ardbeg's most popular Scotch offerings. Why a graphic novel to tell the Ardbeg story?
Well, I think Ardbeg is it's such an incredible brand. It's incredibly serious in how it's making its whiskey. That's there's so much craftsmanship and care taken into the process of creating a bottle of Ardbeg. But at the same time, as a brand, it's very lighthearted, it's unpretentious, it doesn't take itself too seriously. And Ardbegians, the people that like Ardbeg, they're a little bit like that as well. Many of them and many of us, we think of ourselves as proudly weird. And in that context, graphic novels, it fits that beautifully. It's a big growing subculture of people who enjoy having fun, that don't take themselves too seriously, that don't take life too seriously. But that whole art form of graphic novels is certainly, a place where you have people of incredible skill, just like the people that made Ardbeg. So we thought it was a beautiful combination. We started out doing it when we launched Wee Beastie, our
Mhm.
youngest expression, a while back, and people really loved it. We called it a monster of a dram, and we showed these monsters in cartoonish format, and people loved it. And so we decided to stick with it, and it's been really, really well received.
And last summer, Moët Hennessy joined forces with Beyoncé Knowles-Carter to create a new American-made whiskey brand, SirDavis, named after Beyoncé's moonshiner paternal great-grandfather. LVMH already had a 50% stake in Jay-Z's champagne, so you were kind of keeping it in the family. How did that whole project come about?
Another project that we're incredibly excited about and very proud of. Well, as a starting point, Mrs. Knowles-Carter is a genuine lover of whiskey. She's loved whiskey her entire life. It's what she has often likes, it's what she drinks when she's had an opportunity to choose Japanese whiskey, single malt whiskeys. And so she's always had this love of whiskey. And then she also discovered a couple of years ago, like you said, that her great grandfather was a moonshiner and a whiskey maker during Prohibition, where he used to make delicious whiskeys and hide them in the knots of cedar trees for friends and others to find. And when Mrs. Knowles Carter, Beyonce, when she found this out, she felt like, all right, I have to continue his legacy. And that's really what she's doing. She's not looking to make a quick buck here. She really wants to create, together with LVMH, a whiskey to stand the test of time, something that she can pass down to her family. And so she approached us several years ago, and since then we've been working on the project together in a true sense of partnership. We involved Dr. Bill Lumsden early on to help on the creation of the liquid. She explained what her ideal whiskey would be, and Dr. Bill went about trying to design that, and I think came to a really, really interesting place, finding a mash bill which the world really hadn't seen before, certainly not at any scale, which is really a marriage between the single malt way of creating a mash bill, which is malted barley, and then the other half being rye, which is what her great grandfather would have used pre-prohibition and during prohibition. So it's a very unique mash bill, finished in Pedro Jimenez sherry cask, and it tastes like nothing else. And it's a beautiful, beautiful whiskey. And the ambition that she has as the co-founder, and together with us, is to create something that's going to stand the test of time, and that's hopefully is going to change the way people are drinking whiskey. Because what she feels is that there are a lot of people that would enjoy whiskey, but they're not drinking it today because it's often considered to be like a middle-aged, maybe white man's drink, and it should be enjoyed by many more. Certainly by her fans and by whiskey lovers today, but also by people who haven't tried it. And that's the ambition that we have.
So let's talk about your Star Master distiller, Dr. Bill Lubston, which you've dropped his name a couple of times and so
Yeah.
far, and I'm sure you'll drop it again. I've seen him characterized as the mad scientist of Scotch whiskey. Could you talk about him and what he has meant to the success of your whiskey brands?
Dr. Bill is a wonderful personality. He's also incredibly talented at making whiskey. and we're fortunate to have him. If you think about, our Glenmorangie 18s or maybe even the 25s now, is he distilled those, and he put them into casks, and now they're ready to drink. I think it'll be very difficult to find anyone in the Scotch whiskey industry, a master distiller who's been around in the distillery for so long that he can proudly say that I made this when you're opening a bottle of something that's 20 years or older. So we're certainly very happy to have him, and we're very very proud of him. He brings a lot of innovation. He's super innovative, and I think that's what's exciting about Dr. Bill. He doesn't rest on his laurels. He tries to break rules. I think sometimes he has a tendency to make the Scottish Whisky Association, the SWA, a little upset,
Mhm.
because he's certainly no stranger towards bending the rules and trying new things within reason. He is a stickler for quality. He's obsessed by quality. But I think maybe most importantly, he's so passionate about whiskey. So, and I think this goes beyond Glenmorangie. If you hear him speak, he spreads his love of whiskey to audiences around the world. And he speaks highly not just of Glenmorangie, but also of our competitors. And I think that's wonderful. And so you can think of him almost as a creative director for one of our fashion brands. I think that's
Mm.
probably the closest thing you can get to his role. And I think what's wonderful lately is that, being able to take his talents and apply those on other things. We just talked about SirDavis. That's a great example of how we've been able to use his talents on something which is not Glenmorangie or Ardbeg.
I want to shift over to the tequila category. If you look at the tequila sector, the past 4 years have been an unexpected golden age for tequila in which sales have gone through the roof. The premiumization of the category has significantly increased consumer interest in the spirit. However, the thirst for agave spirits appears to be slowing, particularly in the premium and ultra premium price range, as consumers have been gravitating towards less expensive bottles. Moët Hennessy made its first foray into tequila category, I think, in 2017 with the launch of its ultra premium line, Volcan de Tierra. It's been growing brand ever since. How has the brand been holding up as the demand for tequila slows?
Volcan has been performing admirably well, especially last year was a very, very positive year, strong growth in America. But again, I think what we didn't know when we launched Volcan back in 2017, or when it was thought of in terms of its creation back in 2015, was what would happen to tequila. The number of brands that would enter, the number of brands owned by celebrities that would enter.
Right.
It's been really something to watch. And obviously this is part of the reason why tequila has had this explosive growth, which by the way was bound to slow down at some point or another. We are in this, again, I've said it a few times, we're playing the long game. The first thing that we did here was to build the best tequileria in Mexico that we could find at the foot of the volcano, which is named tequila, and which is why the drink is named tequila to begin with. It's very unusual in that it's one nom. It's only producing Volcan. In the vast majority of other cases, obviously, a tequileria tends to produce tequila for many, many brands, but ours produces Volcan and Volcan only. We use no additives whatsoever. So it's one nom, no additives, and we don't cut any corners. It's not a very high margin business for us. I'll be open to say that it's not something that is immediately profitable, but that's not what we're trying to do. We are trying to create an exceptional tequila that will be around for a long time. And so the focus that we have is on slow build, it's on quality, but also innovation. I'll mention the Blanco Tahona that we launched recently. It's, in my mind, is the most delicious Blanco that I've ever had, and a lot of people seem to feel the same way. So we're excited about the future of Volcan.
So, with the new administration threatened tariffs on imports from Mexico may actually become policy, what effect will that have on your tequila business, and how are you preparing for that possibility?
We're actually not, and wouldn't want to comment on tariffs or anything that has to do with politics. We're keeping our heads down, and Volcan is a brand that we're trying to build for the long term. So not really too worried about current politics or tariffs in this moment. We're just focusing on building the brand, and the brand is our ability.
Late last year, LVMH inked a mega 10-year sponsorship with Formula One racing that will kick off this year. As part of the deal, LVMH brands will provide hospitality, bespoke activations, and content tied to Formula One, including Louis Vuitton, which has been designing the custom trunk for the F1 trophy for the past 4 years. Tag Heuer, which was the official timekeeper from 1992 to 2003 at one point, and Moët Hennessy. How will your spirit brands be integrated into the F1 partnership?
It's very exciting. Clearly, it's so exciting because Formula One has seen such tremendous growth in popularity in recent years, and I think it's only set to continue. I'll start off by saying that the main star of the show, as far as Moët Hennessy is concerned, is Moët and Chandon, our champagne. It's going to take center stage in our portfolio in Formula One. But that being said, we're clearly also incorporating and activating our other brands. I'll mention specifically Belvedere, which is doing a lot around Formula One. It's going to be especially visible in after parties and in events surrounding Formula One. You'll see it being the headline product in the after parties in the inaugural 2021 Grand Prix in Melbourne coming up in a couple of weeks. And it's just a good fit for us. It's about luxury, it's about success, it's about excitement, it's about high energy. So clearly, this Formula One partnership is going to be very exciting and beneficial to the full Moët Hennessy portfolio.
Well, speaking of Belvedere Vodka, it's also in your orbit. Its latest campaign marks the launch of Belvedere 10, an ultra premium line extension for the brand. 3-minute short film directed by Oscar winning filmmaker Taika Waititi, and he stars in it too, alongside rapper Future. It's definitely targeting the millennial, middle, upper, and upper income tier. People are still drinking lots of vodka, but perhaps it's not being talked about as much as it once was. A lot of other categories are getting attention. The data shows that ultra premium vodka is forecast to grow, signaling the top end of the category remains attractive. What is the Belvedere brand doing to interweave itself into the lives of consumers?
Oh, first of all, I think you're making a great point in that tequila, people tend to talk about tequila a lot, and they have for many, many years. Vodka remains, king. It is still an incredibly vibrant and exciting category. And whereas in the US, from memory, I think tequila has outgrown vodka, at least on the premium and luxury side in value. Obviously, in rest of the world, tequila is still relatively small in most places. So vodka is exciting. It remains exciting. I'm seeing it more and more also in trendy places. I think I wouldn't be surprised if vodka has a little bit of a comeback. What it has as an advantage is its extreme versatility. Whereas not everyone might enjoy the taste, the flavor of tequila, vodka is incredibly versatile. So we're excited about it, and we're very excited about Belvedere. It's doing very, very well. It was one of our fastest growing brands in recent years, so we're very proud of it. I'll start off. I think the campaign that came before the one that you were talking about with Future for Belvedere 10 was the campaign we created for Daniel Craig with Daniel
Right.
Craig for Belvedere proper, and that was an incredibly successful campaign, which has really helped propel Belvedere in terms of growth, in terms of brand desirability, in terms of excitement. Following that, the launch of Belvedere 10 has been very, very exciting because it's the first real serious major attempt at creating a luxury vodka, a real luxury vodka business in the same way that we have seen, high-end tequilas. And Belvedere 10 is off to a great start. We're very proud about the campaign that we did together with Future, the iconic American rap star, which was directed by Taika Waititi, as you say.
Right.
And we're now seeing Belvedere 10 in more and more places, and it is performing very well indeed. Um, I will also mention, of course, the fact that Belvedere Pure, Belvedere Proper, is becoming organic around the world, and it's the first organic vodka of size. The first organic vodka that has that sort of size that Belvedere enjoys, and that's another very, very exciting thing. So, very exciting marketing, innovation through Belvedere 10, through organic on Belvedere Pure. We have a lot of belief for continued success with Belvedere in vodka, which I think is still a really important category and a category for the future.
We're also seeing rising demand for non-alcoholic alternatives as younger generations move away from conventional products. Moët Hennessy announced in October of last year that it had taken a minority investment in French Bloom, which is a premium alcohol-free sparkling wine. It's LVMH's first investment in non-alcoholic drinks. Do you see more non-alcoholic investments like that in your portfolio?
Well, first of all, I think it's terrific that there is a non-alcoholic option in our portfolio because it's clear that we have several consumers and occasions where that is a great fit. So we're very excited about it and very proud to welcome it into the MH and LVMH family. As for the future, I'm not sure if we're going to be expanding that or not. It's certainly not something that would happen in the short term. We're very proud and excited about the portfolio that we have right now, and that's going to be our focus for the future.
Yeah, so speaking of the future, what does the spirits roadmap look like for a Moët Hennessy in the coming years? Do you see building on your current portfolio through acquisitions? Are there any new categories you want to explore?
I will say that it's an incredibly exciting time for us in Moët Hennessy because traditionally Moët Hennessy is most famous for French grapes, for cognac, for champagne, and obviously we have a formidable cognac in Hennessy and an awe-inspiring champagne portfolio. And next to that, we're now building spirits as a third pillar next to those two beautiful French grape businesses that we have. So we're very serious about it, and we are very intent on building this third pillar for Moët Hennessy. Organic growth is there's so much organic growth to be had. We've talked about Belvedere, we've talked about Glenmorangie, we've talked about Ardbeg. We have, other beautiful brands. We have Woodinville, the American whiskey. We just launched SirDavis. So this is the number one focus. But of course, if another interesting brand comes up, we will definitely have a look at it if to expand the portfolio further. It's not something that happens very often. We are very picky about the brands that we acquire, and we don't acquire nearly as many brands as our competitors do. But certainly, if the right brand was to come up, it's something that we would look at.
Well, Jonas, my final question is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation to get you off that island or anything that requires mobile service so you can call somebody to pick you up off that island. It's just you on this lonely island. What would that one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
Yeah, I thought about that. It's definitely going to have to be the Louis Vuitton Nomad leather hammock. It has to be. Uh, it is
Tell me about that.
comfortable. It's comfortable. It's beautiful, as you can imagine, made in leather using the skill and expertise the way only Louis Vuitton can do it. So it's beautiful. It's beautifully made. And importantly, it will elevate me from the bugs that will undoubtedly be found on the ground on this deserted island and make me very comfortable. Ideally, I know you're only giving me one, but if I can be in that hammock with a small glass of Glenmorangie 18-year-old, then life would be perfect.
I knew you had to get something on brand there, so
Of course.
we'll let that slide for this episode.
All right.
Jonas Tåhlin, President and CEO of the Spirits Division of Moët Hennessy. Thank you so much for joining me on the luxury item.
Thank you, Scott. It was my pleasure.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.